Hello, everyone. Hey, it is John Lone King. It is Monday, the 23rd of February, and it is the day before the Dream for All lottery registration portal opens. So tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., the registration portal is opening, and you will be able to register to get your name into the lottery. So super, super excited. Real quick, tomorrow at 11 a.m., I'm going to be here live again, and I will be demonstrating how to use the portal. So we're going to jump in there together. I'm going to go through it on my screen, and I'm going to show you what to do, what steps to take, things I want to make sure that you understand what the questions mean. So I did this once before 2 years ago with the prior lottery, and it was a very popular video. I'm going to do it again this year. Today, I'm going to do a couple of things. First of all, I want to remind you that if you have not already gotten started with your loan process, you're going to want to click this QR code or scan this QR code up here, or type in the URL californiadreamforall.info. That is my page. That will allow you to get the process started because time is running out. You have 3 weeks from today, 5 p.m., Monday the 16th. This portal turns into a pumpkin. You cannot put your information in there anymore. And if you don't get your information in there, you cannot get in on this year's lottery. It's been almost 2 years since the last lottery. We don't know when the next one's coming. Don't miss out on this one. Now, what I'm going to focus today on is I get a lot of questions about properties. What properties can I buy? Which ones are allowed? Some down payment assistance programs mandate which properties you can actually purchase. So there's a lot of confusion out there. What condition does the property have to be in, et cetera? So that's really what I'm going to be covering today. So let me check one of my settings here really quickly. Perfect. Okay. So property. The first rule is it must be a single family residence. Now, what's the definition of a single family residence? Essentially, it is a one-unit property. It can't be a duplex, it can't be a triplex, it can't be a fourplex, or anything larger. Now, we talk about 1 to 4 units as being residential, true. But for the Dream for All program, it can only be a single family home. Now, the new thing is ADUs, or accessory dwelling units. You can purchase a home with an ADU, but you cannot count the rental income from the ADU. So if you want to buy and get some rental income, buy a house with an ADU and get rental income from the ADU, great, you can do that, but you can't use it for qualifying. So you have to be able to qualify for the purchase and make the monthly payment without counting any of the rental income. Let's say you want to put family in the ADU, no problem, you can do that too. We don't care. You're allowed to buy a single family with one ADU. Now, what is the difference between a single family with an ADU and a duplex? It's up to the appraiser and it's up to the county. It has to do with zoning, has to do with how the property was recorded. If it's a single family with versus if it says duplex. So that's a big piece of it. It's going to have to do with addresses and utilities and are they separate or not? There is no easy answer. It's a general opinion of the appraiser and the underwriter based on what they see from county records and what they see from what the appraiser puts on the report to determine is this a duplex or a single family with an accessory dwelling unit. But the easiest way to know for sure you have a problem is if it says duplex on the county records as the zoning or as the property use, it's a duplex. You can't argue and say, well, no, I want to treat it like a single family with an ADU. The county calls it a duplex. It's a duplex. You cannot do duplexes with this program. Now, who gets to pick the property? You do. You get to pick any property that you want. Now, it is going to be driven by the competition in the marketplace. What I mean by that is if you're buying a home in an area that is in very, very high demand that lots of other buyers are trying to buy, you're going to be at a disadvantage because the Dream for All program is viewed in the eyes of the seller and more importantly, the listing agent representing the seller. It's viewed as less desirable of a buyer. And really, it's sad that they do that. But they do that with VA loans. They do that with any type of down payment assistance loans. The seller is looking at what is the highest price I'm going to get with the highest likelihood of completing this transaction. And when you think about those two things together, a cash buyer has the highest likelihood of completing the transaction. A buyer putting 50% down or more has the second highest likelihood. A buyer putting 20% down has the third highest likelihood, and on and on and on. A buyer who's getting 2 different loans from, even if it's from the same program, is just a higher risk in that hierarchy. And so you have to, even though you can pick any property you want, I need you to recognize your appeal to the seller. The desire of the seller to pick you is minimized compared to someone who's not using a down payment assistance program. Now, here's part of the challenge. Part of the challenge is the stigma that comes with down payment assistance programs. Some of it is rightful and some of it's not. Some of it's justified and some of it's not. One of the challenges with lots of regional down payment assistance programs, state and, or not state, but county and city agencies, is they require an additional inspection that is over and above the normal appraisal. Dream for All does not require that. You don't have to do any kind of special inspection on the property. You can do a home inspection. I don't want to or need to see a copy of that. The only thing I need to see is the appraisal report. And I'll go into in a minute what the appraiser is looking at. But the fact is, a lot of these down payment assistance programs send out a city inspector or a special, San Diego County has amazing programs, but they require a special inspector that follows the rules of the county to do an additional inspection on a bunch of things that the appraiser may not otherwise notice. The problem is the county then requires those things to be fixed. Sellers run from these programs because they're like, hey, I don't want to invite the city code inspector into my house that I'm selling to find problems that now I have to fix them, or I have to disclose to the next buyer that those problems are there. The truth is, many sellers kind of close their eyes and say, don't ask, don't tell. I don't want to know if there's a problem with my house, because then I'm not lying when I don't disclose it. And that's a reason why you need a lender who fully understands Dream for All and understands the psychology of what sellers are thinking, because I preemptively call the seller on all of the offers that you're writing and explain all of this and say, hey, there's no extra inspection required. There's no special rules regarding this program. It just has to be a single family home. An ADU is allowed, and it has to meet normal Fannie Mae conventional guidelines. Now, I'm going to dig into in a minute the difference between a single family, a condo, and a townhome. But first, I'm just going to talk about the general guidelines of Fannie Mae when it comes to an appraisal. The property has to be livable with no health or safety hazards. I've got a buyer right now. He's one of my last 2024 Dream for All buyers. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure this buyer is my last 2024 Dream for All buyer. He got in a contract 2 weeks ago. The property that he is buying, his voucher expired last week on Wednesday. We got him registered last week on Tuesday. So he barely made it under the line. We are getting him a beautiful home, but it needs some work. We got the appraisal back last week. The appraisal showed a significant amount of work that needed to be done. But the appraiser said, this is just part of the value. It's a lower valued property, and therefore it's part of what we call cost to cure. And so the appraiser didn't call out any additional inspectors. The appraiser didn't call out any work that needed to be done. It just said, hey, there's some stuff that's broken on this house. There's some stuff that needs repair, but that's part of why he's getting such a deal on it. Other appraisers may look at the exact same house and say, hey, I want an inspection on the roof. I want a pest inspection. I want this. That appraiser has that right. That appraiser gets to mandate or decide what he's going to require. Then my underwriter is the final authority, and they can ask for more. So we got to be really, really careful, because sometimes, like this one, we got away with a way easier review on that appraisal than what I'm concerned we could have gotten. That's luck of the draw on who the appraiser is, and you don't get to pick the appraiser. I don't get to pick the appraiser. We have a panel of appraisers that we've already vetted and we've pre-selected, but I have to randomly decide between that panel. I'm not allowed to know who it is ahead of time. So there's a lot of problems that were attempted to be resolved after the Great Recession in 2008, where lenders were kind of hand selecting appraisers and only sending the order to an appraiser if that appraiser agreed to give the result the lender wanted. Well, the industry wanted to make sure that didn't happen anymore. And so they keep separation between the lender and the appraiser. So that's the first part of the appraisal part, is it's got to be livable. So livable says, hey, I have an argument in the past where there's 2 bathrooms and one of the bathrooms is completely destroyed. You said, well, I can live there with 1 bathroom. Yeah, but it's not a 1-bathroom home. It's a 2-bathroom home. And so that's not a livable home. In general, that's what the appraiser is going to mandate, is to say, hey, that bathroom has to be repaired. That bathroom has to be functional and working. Okay, that's an example of that. There can be no health and safety issues. There can't be any water, what do they call it? Nobody likes to use the mold word, okay? I just used the word. It's not used in the industry. Like, we don't ever want to call something mold. So we will call it what do we call it? An organic substance that appears to be created from water damage. Okay, that's the word we use. Because we're not certain if it's mold, it's just an organic substance. The point is, that's a health and safety issue. If it could be mold, then we have to have a test to confirm. If there could be termites, we have to confirm. So there's lots of things that can create health and safety issues that you might say, well, John, that's why I'm getting a deal on the house. That's not good enough. So we have to figure out then sometimes how to get those repairs completed before you close escrow. That's a big reason why it's important to get into escrow before your deadline. Because like right now with this buyer, had there become problems and we couldn't get him fixed and he wanted to cancel, he can't reuse his voucher on another property because it's already expired. Now, the final piece I want to talk about is property type when it comes to condominiums and townhomes. So there's a big confusion about what's the difference between a condo and a townhome. Well, the general difference, it's not a literal one, but it's pretty close to the exact difference, is with a condominium, your living space or your neighbor's living space is above or below each other. So you have part of your home or all of your home is above or below somebody else's living space. That's really the layman's definition. That's the easiest way to understand it. Here's why it matters. Because a townhome says they might be touching, but nobody owns something above or below somebody else. If that entire row of townhomes burns down, can you rebuild two of them when the third one doesn't have insurance and can't get rebuilt? Yes, you can. Because you just build, instead of building all three of them connected, this one's not here and that one just has an exterior wall now. It still works. And so that doesn't work when you've got two units on top of each other. You can't rebuild the second unit until the first one's built because you can't build this one floating in the air. And so condominiums have master insurance policies that cover the building and the rebuilding of the building, and it changes the rules completely on how we look at the property. Because now we're worried about the financial health, I should say, of the condominium association, as well as the physical health of the condominium project. And so there's a lot of condominiums that you cannot get conventional financing on because there's something about their financial or physical health that is causing a problem. And you won't know about it until you get into the escrow. Because sometimes the seller says, yep, everything is fine, not knowing any better, not wanting to know any better. And then that seller turns around or you turn around and you pay for the condominium certification. It's a package from the Homeowners Association that tells us all of these financial health details about the condominium project. And in there, we find out they have no reserves, that they've spent all of their money because they didn't want to raise the fees for their owners. And so they didn't project enough money for future repairs. And they burned through all their reserves because of repairs that came up. And now they have deferred maintenance. They have balconies that haven't been fixed. They have staircases that might not have been fixed. Or even if they have fixed all the stuff, but they depleted all of their reserves. Now they have no extra money for future stuff. There's rules on these things, and that prevents us from being able to get financing in there. Townhomes do not have any of those rules. Basically, it has a homeowners association, but it doesn't have the requirements for us to double check the health of the association or the health of the physical buildings. But with condominiums, we do. So condominiums can be done, mobile homes and manufactured homes on land, on a permanent foundation where you own the land underneath it, can be done. Mobile homes and manufactured homes in a park cannot, because you're renting the land. It's not considered real estate. I can do those loans, but I can't do those loans using Dream for All. So I got one question here. So let me pull up my question. Guys, I'm pretty much done. So if you have questions, ask them now. Let's pull up this question. Sarah asks, can you put the property in a trust with Dream for All without triggering anything? Yes, you can. But so the Dream for All program says that you cannot have anyone who's on title that isn't on the loan. And some people try and circumvent that by saying, well, that's fine, I'll just put it in the trust. As an example, Sarah, let's say that a couple tries to purchase together and one person has credit that's too low. And so they buy just in the name of one party, and they qualify and they buy it, no problem. But now they're saying, well, gosh, CalHFA says I can't put the house in both of our names. So let's solve that problem by putting it in a trust that belongs to both of us. Then it's not in somebody's name, but it is. And so CalHFA looks at that as saying, no, that's not allowed. And so the trust has to match the names of the owners of the trust, must match the names of the people on the loan. Now you can use this tool, you can use a trust. It's really an estate planning tool, right? You're allowing your property to pass from you to your beneficiaries without having to go through probate. So you could have your partner as a beneficiary, but they can't be an owner of the trust. So it saves on probate. It fixes the estate planning issue since your partner can't be on title or you don't want them on title, but you cannot have their name as an owner of the trust. It must be a revocable trust. It cannot be an irrevocable trust. We have to review the details of the trust to make sure that it meets all of our regulations. 99% of them that I've ever looked at work perfectly fine. So yes, you can put the property into a trust. It won't trigger anything as long as the trustees, there's multiple words and I don't want to get into the legal side of it, but basically, as long as the only place that a person can be named that isn't currently a borrower is as a beneficiary, as someone who is going to get the benefit of the property once you pass away. But they cannot be listed right now as anything else on the trust per CalHFA. Otherwise, that would trigger CalHFA's repayment clause that says, hey, if you add anybody else to title, you have to repay the loans immediately. So I hope that makes sense, Sarah. Does not look like I have any other questions. So I'll remind you guys, first of all, she says, isn't that assumed if it's our spouse? No, it is not. It is not. It is not. This is a great question. So here's what's happening. First of all, somebody's blowing up my phone. What is happening is that when you buy without your spouse on the loan, yes, technically in the state of California, it's a community property state. So therefore, your spouse is assumed as an owner of the property, okay? But we won't be okay with that because as a lender, I don't care if it's Dream for All or any type of a loan, if the spouse is not a borrower on the loan, they automatically have presumed ownership in a community property state such as California. But that creates a legal problem for us because now I've got a presumed owner who didn't give written permission for our loan to be recorded against title. And so technically, that presumed owner, your spouse, could argue later and say, hey, this mortgage is null and void because I am a partial owner of this property and I didn't give you written permission to put this mortgage on the property. So every lender in a community property state where you're buying as a married person without your spouse requires a document called an interspousal grant deed. That is your spouse granting their presumed ownership back to you, and that's recorded before our deed is recorded. So your spouse signs that. Now they have relinquished their presumed partial ownership. Now, when it comes to the trust, if you're saying that, hey, John, it's in a trust and my spouse is presumed as a partial owner of that trust, I'm not going to tell you the legal side of that. I don't know. I'm not an attorney. I don't play one on TV. What I can tell you is what CalHFA has said, which is you can put the property in a trust, but the non-borrowing parties cannot be named in that trust other than a beneficiary. And trusts, as far as I know, as far as I'm concerned, they're explicit. They're not implicit. Like you have to outline explicitly in the trust who's getting what. And so any of the implied ownership doesn't apply to a trust. But again, not an attorney, don't want to give legal advice. And that is definitely overstepping my bounds on what I'd feel comfortable telling you. So hopefully that makes sense. Let me know if you have any questions about that. Right now, it doesn't look like anybody else has any other questions. If you have a question, post it right now. Otherwise, I'm going to wrap up with the fact that, hey, tomorrow's the day. If you're going to get into Dream for All and you don't have your pre-approval letter yet, first of all, I am interviewing for the job of being your lender. If it's not clear enough, I want to be your lender. I've got a lot of kids that I need to put through college, okay? I'm kidding a lot. No, I don't. I have 3. But the point is that I want to be your lender. And I am interviewing for that job. And so if you want my help in getting into the Dream for All program, scan that QR code up there or click on the link. I know you can't click right there, but type that in. That will take you to my Dream for All page. On the top, you can start the application. We're getting further into the process. You have 3 weeks left to get your pre-approval letter into the portal. we need to collect an application. We need to pull your credit. We need to collect your documentation. And I had 30 people over the weekend already apply just this weekend. There's a lot of people coming in. We got 7 people on my team that are going to take great care of you, but the longer you wait, the longer it's going to take and the more you risk running out of time. So start now. If you have any questions, reach out to me directly. All the information that you need is in that QR code. You can book a call with me if you have questions. You can check out my Dream for All calculator if you want to run numbers, anything that you need. Sarah, it looks like, has one more question. Happy to answer it. And then once I'm done answering this question, if nothing else has popped up, then I'll let you guys go. So Sarah has 2 comments here. If the house with the Dream for All transfers to the spouse, because they're the beneficiary, do they keep the Dream for All loan, or does it trigger repayment? I don't know. I honestly don't know. I've never asked that question of CalHFA. I actually have a call with them this afternoon. I will see if they have time for Q&A and see if I can get that answer from them. That's a really, really good question. I don't even want to begin to answer. So yeah, it's a good question to ask. I have no clue if they're going to let that spouse who is now the beneficiary and now took over ownership because the primary borrower passed away, can they keep the Dream for All loan? That is a fantastic question. Remind me on the next one. I may not, well, I'll be on tomorrow at 11 live. But I'll be focused on the Dream for All portal and how to get registered. Wednesday night, 7 p.m. every week until March 16th. I'll be doing a full 1-hour webinar as well. But Sarah, catch me on any of them and I'll happily answer the question for you. Hopefully I can get that answer from them tonight or this afternoon. Gang, really appreciate you joining me. Bottom line, watch this again if you joined late. Goes over all the different things you need to know about how to determine what property you can buy. And ultimately, tomorrow is the day we get started. So let's make sure we get the information in. Reach out if you have any questions, and everybody have a wonderful day. See you tomorrow at 11 a.m. where we go through the walkthrough and getting you into the portal. Talk to y'all soon. Bye-bye.